Now we turn to another issue we've covered, that brutality on Rikers Island, and a subject that we've talked at great length on the program about, albeit in a different function. In July, New York Times, they did a series where they shed light on the abuse that the mentally ill inmates, and we're talking about a huge portion of the population now compared to what it used to be, how this population is routinely suffering at the hands of correction officers and others who are ill-equipped to give them proper care. Times found that over the course of 11 months, 129 inmates suffered serious injuries, and more than 3/4 of them were diagnosed as mentally ill. One of those inmates, Jose Bautista, he tried to hang himself in his cell. Then correction officers responded with force. After rescuing, they beat him while he was handcuffed, perforating his bowel. And they even got worse after that. But tonight, we are shifting our focus, as the Times did recently, to the treatment of adolescent inmates. Federal report conducted by the Office of the U.S. Attorney General, Preet Bharara, they found, quote unquote now, a deep-seated culture of violence against adolescent inmates at Rikers carried out by those correction officers. Report going on to say that the COs struck adolescents in the head and face at alarming rates as punishment, even when inmates pose no threat. They also said they beat them with radios, batons, broomsticks, and slammed their heads against walls. Another inmate sustained a skull fracture and was left with the imprint of a boot on his back, apparently for the crime of falling asleep in a classroom. And many inmates were so afraid of the violence that they asked for their own protection to get put into solitary confinement. And again, everyone, we're talking about 16 to 18-year-olds that are now, New York is one of only 2 states here where you get automatically incarcerated for this. And Dominic, you've done quite a bit with this. Last month you spoke with Norman Seabrook, and Norman's the head of the New York City Correction Officers Benevolent Association, about the report, that time focusing on the mentally ill.
Well, Richard, as you might expect, the union is strongly in the corner of the city correction officers and say violence, unfortunately, is part of the job. Here is what Mr. Seabrook told us. As he says, as far as he's concerned, when it comes to the safety of correction officers, inmates, quote, can go to hell. And he explained why. Until they have broken bones in their face.
Let me ask you a very serious question. If I'm a New York City correction officer, do you think that I am Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and you have a referee in the ring that says, okay, no hitting below the belt, no doing this, no doing that? No. These inmates attack New York City correction officers. They attack other inmates. They attack civilians in the Department of Corrections.
So are you admitting your officers are brutal?
I'm saying to you that a correction officer must use whatever force is necessary to terminate the incident. And I am certainly not going to say to them, wait a minute, before you decide to defend yourself and swing and punch this person, don't swing too hard, because we don't want no accidents to happen here where they get injured. No, it doesn't work like that, Dominic. You fight because your life depends on it. These are murderers, rapists, arsonists. These are individuals that take the lives of people in the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Gun violence is out of control. Do you think that they come there and say, let me play nice with the correction officers?
Okay, but that doesn't give the correction officers the right to violate the law.
No, it doesn't.
Let me move on, because I have a lot to get to, including a very controversial quote from you.
Go ahead.
But I'm quoting Daniel Sealing now. This is what he had to say, and he was the director of the jail's mental health services. Let's take a look at this.
He was the director?
Yes, but let's take a look at what he had to say, if we can go ahead and put that up. There's lots of brutality, horrible brutality. Now, how do you explain that, Mr. Seabrook?
I think that this person just has an axe to grind.
Really?
Absolutely, Dominic.
Why would he have an axe to grind against correction officers?
Because you said he used to be.
Right.
Okay, and at the end of the day, we don't allow them, mental health or anybody else that comes into the confines of a jail, to do what it is that they want to do. Dominic, we are always going to be looked upon as the bad guy.
Seabrook saying his members, as you just heard, are always going to be looked upon as the bad guy. Well, that is indeed the case based on this report by the New York Times and by the U.S. Attorney. Richard?
Yeah, and when you go through the report, and I recommend everybody reads it, it is unbelievable what's happening there, because there's no checks and balances. Nobody ever gets in trouble. They still use paper systems. They don't even use computers to follow this stuff. It's out of control. And when the cops and they even the COs, excuse me, when they do use excessive force, and even the captain on scene says it's excessive force, nothing ever happens to them because, nobody wants to do anything about it. But again, we're talking about kids, 16 to 18-year-olds, and when you read what they've done for some of the beatings that they have to incur, one of them was allegedly raped by a CO, and he went to and the CO said, "You better not say a word," and they told him, according to him, that if he so much as said something, there was going to be ramifications inside. So just think about this. You're a minor at Rikers. Something happens to you and you have nowhere to go. Your best option is to go into solitary confinement for a month at a time. And I think every therapist in the world will tell you, if you're forget about minor, anybody goes into solitary, that's the equivalent of, that's how bad things are there. So the U.S. Attorney is going to shake things up here, and I think it's going to be a popular thing in New York to do it. But again, that was Dominic's conversation with Mr. Seabrook here, and trust me, more's coming up on this. All right, when we come back, Andrew's going to catch us up on Governor Cuomo's moorland morass. We have been reporting on this one for weeks here, but the question is, what do voters say? We've got some polls out on this, and also we're going to talk about where this thing goes from here. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.